The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning. Let's wait another minute while people still join the call. All right, well, before I head into the presentation, I just wanted to let you guys know that this session is being recorded, so you will be able to review parts at a later time. You're muted during the call. If there are any questions during this call, there's the chat functionality, which you can use, and my colleague Alexander is actively responding to your questions. So I will, in the meantime, continue the presentation as I won't be able to see your questions, but yeah, you'll be able to ask questions whenever you want during this entire session. So welcome to this Veeam Data Protection as a Service for Microsoft 365 version 7 webinar. My name is Michael Joff. I am a cloud and hosting system engineer for the Benelux. So my role is to support our managed service provider partners from a technical aspect. Although this webinar is targeted at our managed service providers, we want to deliver VB365, so Veeam Backup 365 as a managed service provider. But end customers are, of course, welcome to stay, as this webinar will give them a good idea of how our managed service providers can actually assist them. So without further ado, these are the topics that I will address today. I will give you a quick overview of Veeam Backup for Microsoft 365 for BCSP, so for the Veeam Cloud and Service Providers, followed by the main new features in version 7, like advanced monitoring and reporting with the tool called Veeam ONE, immutable backup copies, increased control for backup as a service, and the self-service restore portal enhancements, which have been enhanced, as it says, and some useful minor enhancements. A lot of additions, so there's not enough time to go through everything. But at the end of the session, there will also be time left for a more extensive Q&A, by the way. So feel free to ask questions during the session via chat or at the end of this session. Now, let's rewind and start with the reason why we're doing backups in the first place. Obviously, outages and data loss are an unfortunate reality. And the hot topic is, of course, security and ransomware, where businesses today are facing exponential complexity that impacts how their IT infrastructure is evolving. So, yeah, it's hard to keep track of things, and ransomware attacks keep being more probable due to these reasons, among others. So 85%, well, via research, 85% of companies have experienced at least one ransomware attack in the past year, according to this data protection trends report we've done in early this year. IT environments are complex, like I said, and that includes where companies are backing up their data. Hybrid cloud is the norm. So on average, 67% of companies back up production data to the cloud. And most concerning, despite all this complexity and risk, only 28% of companies update their recovery plans more frequently than once a year. So just think about how much data changes day to day in your organization. So you can only imagine that across the board. So recovery plans are definitely not being updated as frequently as they should be. And the topic at hand is obviously Microsoft 365. A lot of cyber attacks often target Microsoft 365, 80% actually. 17% of the attacks originated via email and 25% via malicious link phishing. And on top of that, 1/3 of data on average is typically unrecoverable after an attack. So that is the main concern here, which leads us to Veeam Backup for Microsoft 365 for VCSP, for the managed service providers. So many customers, just to reintroduce the whole shared responsibility model, many customers still don't realize that most of the software as a service companies have what they call a shared responsibility model, which means that the SaaS provider primarily protects the infrastructure, but the protection of that data lies with the customer. And not only does this create an opportunity for cloud and managed service providers to educate their customers about the need for a trusted backup solution for their Microsoft 365 data, but Veeam Backup for Microsoft 365 also offers service providers the opportunity to create new recurring revenue streams, an expansion of an existing backup as a service portfolio if they're already managing various Veeam products for a customer, and the ability to become a trusted advisor and help their customers to really mitigate the risk of critical data loss. So this, the Veeam Service Provider Console version 7 is what I'll mainly be showing in the during the demo parts of this presentation, webinar, I should say. This Service Provider Console expands on a powerful core feature set to provide cloud and managed service providers with deeper capabilities to help them scale the delivery of remote Veeam-powered Microsoft 365 backup. Save time, drive efficiency, while also the SLAs, the service level agreements performance. Onto the main features for the Service Provider Console core capabilities. From top left, I'll start with the remote monitoring and management. You'll find complete visibility and management of your customer's cloud, physical and virtual workloads from one single user interface. Then the customer onboarding and billing. You'll find a simplified onboarding and integrated billing options via APIs, or seamless integration into ConnectWise. Automation APIs, the next icon there. There is a deep API interface which introduces a lot of actions, endpoints, and requests, so it provides a seamless integration into your existing workflows. The multi-tenancy for backup as a service and disaster recovery as a service, very important. Through the Service Provider Console, you're able to scale your business from a central location with the confidence of knowing that all your customers' data is secure and separate, obviously, which is what multi-tenancy obviously implies, but it's really there. And of course, licensing and usage reporting, powerful usage reporting and licensing engine enables you to generate and deploy customer licenses while providing automated monthly reporting, or you could make custom reports and change the exact reporting schedules. That's all up to the customer's wishes and what you want to provide to your customers. And last but of course, not least, the self-service portals for customers and partners, which are really great because these allow the customers and resellers, well, it gives them the ability to set their unique privileges and security measures, and empowers them to securely initiate restores of emails, files, and more. The web-based portal offers, of course, incredible time savings from handling these customer restores, customer questions, and you don't have to build and maintain your own portal. We've already prepared all this for you. Now, a little summary, a high-level diagram. Starting from the left, there's the protect part. We're protecting Microsoft 365 for Exchange, SharePoint, OneDrive for Business, Microsoft Teams, with our Veeam backup for Microsoft 365 solution, and also the on-premises Exchange and SharePoint. This is being backed up to object storage like Amazon S3, Wasabi, Azure Blob, or on-premises with local storage, or on-premises object storage, the S3 compatible object storage. Then we can make copies with immutability to, once more, S3 compatible storages, Amazon S3, for example, and Microsoft Azure, of course. But the S3 compatible part is very interesting for many partners, since they host this themselves in many cases. Onto the recovery part, we have these Veeam Explorers, which allow you not only to recover backups as a whole, but also to be much more granular. So you can recover emails, you can recover specific files or folders from OneDrive or Teams files and folders. So there is that granularity, and it's offered to the actual end customer, so they can self-service these recoveries without having to call support for every single file or every single time they want to restore a file or email or whatever they would like to restore. And all this, of course, with advanced monitoring from Veeam ONE, which is a single pane of glass, which gives a lot of insights, intelligent reports, and also real-time alerts. Now onto the demo. Well, actually, since I've touched upon the high-level design a little bit, I would like to first guide you through some architectural matters via our best practices portal before we head into the actual service provider console or graphical interface. So let's see. Alexander, could you please put this the link to the service provider console, through the best practices in the chat? Obviously, the presentation will be shared after this call, but it's always nice to have this link. So these are the best practices for our managed services, and in this case, obviously the topic is Microsoft 365. This is maintained by our architects in EMEA, and it's a great practical guide on how to design, how to size and build various managed service related Veeam services. And like I said, zooming in on Microsoft 365, you're presented first with a high-level overview, high-level diagram featuring a Microsoft 365 environment and multiple storage locations. So it can be either in local storage, object storage, your managed cloud, customer side, and of course copies to public cloud are also possible. This is like a typical setup, so to speak. Onto the design part. As an MSP, you need to decide on whether you want to host a multi-tenant deployment or a pod deployment, so to speak, consisting of a dedicated infrastructure per customer. So just browsing through this, I'm not going to go through all the text, but you'll really find all the information you need. And of course, we're here, the SEs and architects, we're here to assist you as partners with setting this up or fine-tuning it, improving it, enhancing it. But in this specific diagram, you'll see the multi-tenant setup with one tenant, tenant 2, tenant 3, with one common Veeam backup for Microsoft 365 server. And the alternative is the pod setup, where you have a VB365 server per tenant. Tenant 1, tenant 2 has its own, tenant 3 has its own VB365 server, and all this is managed by a Veeam service provider console. Then quickly onto the build section. This contains more information on the elements you've seen in the diagrams and how to size them. So like management server, for example, minimum requirements for CPU, RAM, etc. Proxy server, same thing. And finally, the operate section, which is when the infrastructure is fully deployed and functional, and it's time for final guidelines on the organization configuration, job configuration, throttling, restores. Yeah, it's a very practical guide, best practices, and of course, yeah, we are here to assist you with these if you have more questions, etc. Now on to the service provider console. This is a demo environment, so it has all kinds of tests by me and my colleagues, and yeah, we're also triggering warnings and other issues in order to test things, so don't be surprised by that. So let's see, if we first go to the health of the Veeam backup for Microsoft 365 section. This is a very standard graph, of course. As you can see, you can also manage other solutions through the same portal. So it's not just Veeam backup for Microsoft 365. Let's take a look at the most interesting parts in this menu. The session states, for example, has all the data about past jobs, and you can filter on the period and workload type. You can see that most of these are going well. Also, a high percentage is not going well. And then it's all available for troubleshooting. You can check various jobs, why they failed, what the error message is. Yeah, it's very, it gives you a lot of insight and makes your life easier when troubleshooting is necessary. Let's see. We also have the top. Well, these are basically statistics for usage. For example, you want to stay aware of how much space, how much storage space is being used, for example, the top users or top companies by traffic, all these relevant items for a managed service provider to make sure that the platform they're managing for their customers is actually well, elastic and sufficient for what they're trying to deliver. So it gives you real-time insights on that. Let's see. Other parts, trends, of course, are important. Let's go to the 365 trends. So here you see the amount of objects added in Teams or the users added. Obviously, in a demo environment, it's not huge. 21 object, 18 objects in the last few months. Yeah. SharePoint sites, etc. Resources and billing, also very important. You can, like I said, it's multi-tenant, so you currently have selected all resellers and all companies. You could also choose one specific one and see the actual resources and billing details per customer or per partner, depending on what you would like to see. The companies themselves, you can select a specific tenant, edit services. You can see that, let's see, this one. You can see that Microsoft 365 is enabled. You can see the backup server in question, backup repository. You can edit them as well, or add another storage repository. It looks simple. It gives you a nice overview in one single pane of glass, but it also has many of the details, or pretty much all the details you need to manage your multi-tenant environment. Let's see if there's another essential thing I would like to show you. Yes, the subscription plans. That's also very interesting. You can actually set a different subscription plan per customer depending on their size, on well, their discounts, or the relationship you have with this specific customer. Let's select one and edit it. So you can set, for example, a separate price per user, or per storage or archive. You can have a different price per customer. And also in the advanced settings, you can, for example, have a specific periods where the service is for free, for example, or for specific users. You can make it free of charge for a while before the actual billing kicks in. So from that aspect, it also offers you a lot of flexibility. It's really been, it's not just called Service Provider Console, it's really been developed with service providers in mind. And one last bit that I would like to point out is that the customers will also have access to, or if you want to, you can give them access to this service provider console as well. Of course, their view will be limited. They will not see all these details. They'll just see the active alarms, protected data summary, some resources they have, the resources that are managed by the service provider console, the backup jobs, different rules, and what is managed, and some reports which the customers can set themselves as well. So that gives them more freedom while the service provider is still in control. Yeah. Back to the slide deck. Next part is the advanced monitoring and reporting. This allows an MSP to proactively monitor and manage a customer's Microsoft 365 backup environment. So you have the full visibility. You can oversee your whole backup landscape with the help of that single pane of glass. Proactive management, of course, so you can proactively react to any issues affecting your backup environments with the help of automated alarms. You can track the execution of backup jobs with the help of Veeam ONE. Alarms and reports, and last but not least, the compliance part. You can automatically produce documentation for auditors with the help of historical reports. And this is being done through Veeam ONE. So it doesn't just give you visibility of Veeam backup for Microsoft 365, but also for the infrastructure related to this delivered service, the backup servers that are needed, backup proxies, backup repositories. I will not go too much into these details. It's all explained in the best practices guide, but of course you can set up a meeting with me or my colleagues for a more detailed session where we explain these elements if you're not an active managed service provider, a Veeam managed service provider yet. For those that are, obviously you're familiar with these terms. And some updates for Veeam ONE. So there are more than 10 extra types of alarms. There's a new dashboard, a web client, so to speak, which I'll show you as well, which has some nice reports. The historical and SLA-based backup reporting, which I've mentioned before. And some REST API endpoints to integrate with third-party solutions. And license-wise, Veeam ONE is actually at no additional cost for customers of Veeam backup for Microsoft 365. So existing customers can simply download Veeam ONE version 12. Demo section. So this is the interface for Veeam ONE, which gives you insights on the managed customer, the user groups, the job status, the repositories, backup proxies as well. You can make sure that nothing is overloaded, get access to the alarms and what has happened here with one specific job. Gives you those insights. Then when going to the service, you can actually see the performance, for example. So the CPU usage, in this case, over the last 12 hours, memory, disk usage, very important, and your network usage as well. In the backup repositories, you can check the capacity. I'm jumping too quickly. Capacity, for example, also essential for you as a service provider to make sure you allocate the right amount of space for each customer and then expand it when needed. And the same goes for object storage, for backup proxies, similar kind of insights. Obviously, you can see that I've selected Veeam Backup for Microsoft 365. This also works with your Veeam Backup and Replication server. So you can see all your insights of your managed services in this one advanced monitoring tool. And the reports I mentioned in the web client, I need to log in again. There's a nice dashboard where we're selecting Veeam Backup for Microsoft 365 with backup job status, top repositories, the essential ops dashboards. And in reports, there are actually templates for Microsoft 365 already set up regarding backup SLA compliance, job history, latest job status, protected objects, which you can, of course, also tweak. You can set an interval, last 24 hours. You can really fine-tune the report that you're generating for the specific task. Well, it can be a regular report or some specific requirements from the customer or auditor or whatnot. That concludes the Veeam ONE section. Onto immutable backup copies. It's self-explanatory, obviously. The benefit of immutability is that malicious encryption and deletion is prevented. So you get the peace of mind that Microsoft 365 data is out of reach from cyber attacks. So yeah, immutable defense. Ransomware cannot change or delete your backups. There's also data separation involved. So your data is truly separated, and the confidence that recovery is possible and with ease, without missing any data or without recovering corrupt data. This was actually already in version 6 of VB 365, but in version 7, it also allows you to send backup copies to any storage type. So service providers will be able to use their existing on-prem S3 compatible storages, not just Azure Blob or Amazon S3, And the ease of retention setup is also good to notice. So I could actually show in the lab how to set up an object storage to Immutable. It's a very easy process. Although it doesn't work for an existing object. So it has to be a new one. Let's see, just quickly go to the lab. So here I have an object storage, which it's already existing, so I can't make it immutable. But if you were to create a new or add storage object, let's just edit this, it's faster. You'll see it all grayed out because it's already existing. And in the end, you get to the immutability part to make backup copies immutable for the entire duration of their retention policy. So protecting backup copies from modification or deletion by ransomware hackers or malicious insiders using native object storage capabilities. And like you see here, it's an existing container, so I can't make it immutable, but when you create a new one, it is possible. Yeah, let's jump back to the slide deck. Increased control for backup as a service. It's a summary of what I've mentioned before. So with increased control over data protection, better monitoring, meet SLAs. Yeah, there are just a lot of benefits with this updated tooling for backup control. The tenant autonomy, which I've mentioned a few times before, where customers are able to set a few things themselves. Or a lot of things actually. I just want to specify that, for example, they could create jobs, but they can't. A customer cannot schedule a job because we want to restrict that. We want the service provider to stay in control of well, their platform. So a service provider wants to regulate when jobs are taking place instead of that every customer sets the default job at, I don't know, 11 p.m. and then all the customers start doing the backup jobs at 11 p.m. and that would just be an issue for the service provider platform. So that's a functionality that's been purposely restricted to the service provider. And easy adoption, so it's easy to create a secure onboarding, to add new tenants, to add new customers, and to set up a customer-specific billing system. More about this control, which I just mentioned, self-explanatory. The service provider needs to stay in control while giving some control to the customer and more visibility as well. Now, the self-restore portal has some additions to it. So it empowers users to restore their own emails, files. I mentioned this before, actually. Now it also supports Microsoft Teams. So these emails and files that was already available in version 6. Now we've also added the support for Microsoft Teams. Users can choose individual restore points with SharePoint and OneDrive folders, and also the access to the service provider console for customers is also there. A restricted portal, of course, yeah, as mentioned before. So all in all, we're offering more granularity to restore possibilities. I'll quickly demonstrate this. Let's see. So I could go to as you're doing this, I'll just jump straight to restore portal for a specific user. Let's see, we can go to overview. No, it's easy to simply show the restore portal. This is this pops up from the service provider console. I've selected a specific user which actually has a Teams account and also SharePoint, and we want to restore a specific file, let's say a picture from his media player library. Clicking on restore. This is the item in question. You can restore it to the original location or to a new location. A reason, that's also nice, because this is what the customer would do himself. So yeah, it's also nice to inform the service provider on the reason why this restore is taking place. If that's been defined in the way of working or SLAs, etc. Summary of this restore. But my main point here was that you can really select one file and you're not restricted to restoring the whole folder or a huge chunk of the folder. It's very granular, easier to work with for both customers and service providers. Onto the useful minor enhancements. So just discuss the bigger enhancement, the more important ones. But these are, well, like the title says, very useful as well. So description field for organizations, that's handy for managed service providers with many tenants in scope. To have more documentation, more clarity. Uninstalling the VB365 license via PowerShell, that's to uninstall a license from a server, which comes in handy for migration scenarios between servers. These are also interesting. The REST API for temporary folders, which is great for large environments. So if you have a temporary folder that grows too much and could overload the drive, you have these REST APIs that can help you customize the folder or export or restore it. Another great one is the REST APIs for continuing the interruption of PST file download. So it used to be set up in such a way where if you would export a PST file, so your whole email archive, so to speak, if there was any kind of disturbance on the network, timeout, interruption, whatever it is, when resuming, this PST file would start downloading from scratch again. And now with these REST APIs, it would resume the download. So the time spent on downloading is not wasted. It will simply resume the actual download. Now for some troubleshooting enhancements, opening a folder when with exported logs. So when you export the log, you immediately get to the right folder, which makes it easier for troubleshooting. It speeds things up. And the same for the per repository retention logs. It's also been included or added for easier troubleshooting. Many of these enhancements have been provided not only internally by our system engineers, but also our partners or customers. They're suggesting all these enhancements, and yeah, we're trying to do our best to include them. And there are, of course, many other recovery options and items within Veeam Backup for Microsoft 365. This overview has grouped them by Exchange Online, on-prem, OneDrive, SharePoint, and Microsoft Teams. I will not go into all the different items, but like I said, you will have this deck. It will be uploaded to Pro Partner, so you can review this at your own pace and see what is the most relevant for your customers, for your service delivery projects. And this pretty much rounds out the presentation. I have a few more takeaways here, practical documentation, which you can access either via the direct link below or the QR code. So here's one for the customers that do not see the relevance of backing up Microsoft 365. It's a Gartner report, so it's not vendor biased. Another good one is the Microsoft 365 backup guide. Last but not least, you can also try the Veeam backup for Microsoft 365 for free for 30 days if you're not using it yet, or suggest customers to try it if you're planning on onboarding them onto your MSP platform. So we've now reached the Q&A part. I obviously have no idea how busy that chat was, so I'm not sure if there are many questions still unanswered, or if you would like to ask some questions at this point.
I think I've covered most of the questions. So thank you very much for everyone for asking him.
So if there are no more questions, I would just simply like to thank you for attending. Thank you for listening to this webinar, and also make you aware of the fact that we have an event in May called Veeam ONE. It's in Miami, and we will do another introduction, deep dive into the Veeam backup for Microsoft 365 version 7. So you'll get an even more advanced presentation if you're planning on attending Veeam ONE. So this encourages you. It gives you another good reason to go to Veeam ONE this year. It's in May 23rd, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. So you're welcome to join us there. All right. Thank you very much.